Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting of council for the town of Petawawa to order for May 20th, 2025. Welcome to members of council, staff, and our special guests here this evening. We'll start this meeting off with the reading of the land acknowledgement, and this evening it's Councillor Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we gather this evening, I would like to acknowledge on behalf of the Petawawa Town Council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Omama-Winini Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Omama-Winini people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years, and we wish to acknowledge our shared responsibilities in responding to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission 94 calls to action. Call to action number 54. We call upon the Government of Canada to provide multi-year funding for the National Council for Reconciliation to ensure that it has the financial, human, and technical resources required to conduct its work, including the endowment of a National Reconciliation Trust to advance the cause of reconciliation. Recent progress. The Government of Canada announced $126.5 million in budget 2019 to support the establishment and operation of the National Council for Reconciliation.
Thank you, Councillor Donovan. And now I'd ask if all those in attendance would please stand for a moment of silent reflection. Thank you very much. Okay, just before we get underway, it's great to be back in Petawawa, back from my little trip to Lay Warden in the Netherlands. I'd like to thank Deputy Mayor Sabrin for doing a bang-up job while I was away and chairing the two meetings. It's almost like nobody missed me around here. Okay, I need a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Councillor Root, second by Councillor Donovan, that the agenda for the May 20th, 2025 regular meeting of council be adopted as presented. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest on any of this evening's matters? Councillor.
Yeah, I would like to disclose a pecuniary interest for PL 1725. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Driscoll. So Councillor Driscoll has declared a potential deemed indirect pecuniary interest with respect to staff report PL-17-2025 Declaration of Surplus Lands and Conveyance Bylaw 1756/25, as he is part of the ownership group of 1000961675 Ontario Incorporated Petawawa Storage Group. Next, we have some minutes for the council meeting of May 5th, 2025 that need approval. I need a motion to approve those minutes. Moved by Councillor Carmody, seconded by Councillor Coutu, that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held May 5th, 2025 be approved as printed and circulated. Any questions or concerns with the minutes? I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried. Okay, next we have a special guest with us this evening for a presentation on the evolution of diversity. It's Suli Adams, a Petawawa resident, and I'll turn it over to Councillor Coutu to make the introduction.
Thank you, Mayor Service. Thank you very much to Suli for joining us here tonight. I just want to briefly introduce Suli. She's retired from a career in research science, which included clinical trials for cancer treatment. More recently, she worked at CNL as a root cause analyst, a nuclear oversight auditor, and as a regulatory specialist for the NRU reactor. Suli is passionate about contributing to our local community, and she has volunteered in many capacities with PSP, the PMFRC, Employment Services in Petawawa. She's also taught ESL under the citizenship program for newcomers in the area. Suli was the past co-chair for the Pembroke Diversity Committee, and currently she assists the local immigration partnership for Lanark and Renfrew counties with many of their cultural initiatives. She's also a member of the Pembroke Hospital Board of Directors. So she is here tonight because her personal journey and her reflections are very important. These reflections on identity and belonging and where we can go as a town to create a more diverse and inclusive space are hopefully going to very much illuminate us all and the work that the ADI committee is doing. So without further ado, thank you, Suli. I'll turn it to you.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to be here to share some thoughts. So I would like to present a little bit of history that might be of interest, and also I just celebrated 50 years of landing in Canada in April. So I have a perspective that is then and now, what Canada was like 50 years ago versus now. And I'd like to present some current challenges that refugees and immigrants have in Canada today. So maybe I'll get through all of that. So from a history point of view, I was born in Kenya, East Africa. East Africa, British East Africa was 3 countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And Idi Amin in 1972 announced that he had a dream where God told him to expel all the Asians. There were 80,000 Asians in Uganda. These were the doctors, the lawyers, the accountants, the businessmen, the big import-export under British rule that had put Uganda on the map. Nobody knew what Uganda was until this development. And Uganda was the pearl of Africa, the richest country in Africa, and known worldwide, as was Kenya. So when he announced that, he gave Asians 90 days to leave the country. And he gave his soldiers full rule. He said the Asians like their women and they like their money. So go for it. And it became a very violent 90 days. The first 30 days, nobody really believed it. And everybody thought, like, that's crazy. The country is nothing, like it'll, you know. And the British wouldn't allow this. The world won't allow this. But they did. And so 80,000 Asians were left, their bank accounts were frozen. And on the way to the airport, there was like, you'd have about 24 soldier stations that would harass you. They shot people. If you had a wedding band you couldn't take off, they'd cut your finger off because that gold band was property of Uganda. It was awful. And Canada agreed to take 6,000 Asians, refugees. So they sent Mike Malloy, who is the immigration officer in his 20s. He's now in his 80s. And he went down to Kampala to pick 6,000 Asians. And he called Ottawa and said, I can't do this. Our policy doesn't allow this. Because Canadian policy at the time was that to be a refugee in Canada, you had to be white and you had to be skilled. None of the Asians were white. And there was a whole mix of skilled and unskilled. I mean, these were, people newly born to like in their 80s. And so Pierre Elliott Trudeau, the Prime Minister, changed the policy in a hurry within a week. And this allowed the first set of colored immigrants, refugees, to Canada. So that was 1972. And because things were very up in the air in Tanzania and Kenya as well, the immigration rules were relaxed a little bit. So it made it easier to be sponsored as an immigrant. So my father was sponsored by my refugee cousin who left at machine gun points pointing at him in the middle of the night. And he left in his pajamas and he boarded a plane in his pajamas. And at the time, life in Canada was very difficult because people of color were not very well known. There were very few colored immigrants. You had to be rich and skilled. And so this was the first influx. And this policy change is what allowed the boat people to come to Canada. And it is that policy change that has made Canada very diverse. So when I first came here, for big occasions, we always did henna. I put henna on my hand and I went to Woolworths to buy something, and the cashier freaked out because she thought I had a disease and she thought the money was contaminated. And, I showed her like it's a heart and it's got my initial and flowers. Disease don't grow like this. But there was no way. So I had to just walk out. And the next 2 weeks I wore gloves and I didn't put henna on for a long time after that. Mm-hmm. So that was then, now everybody knows what henna is. And we've got Indian restaurants and Thai restaurants. We've got cultural events with music. And qualifications were not recognized back then. My cousin who sponsored us was a chemistry professor at the University of Uganda. And, he did 2 minimum wage jobs and studied by correspondence to get his CPA, to get a job. All my cousins did that, a good place to work was on Metcalf at the museum, because you only had to do rounds once an hour in the evening, and then you could study or write your, study for your exams and do homework. So when I watch CTV News today, and I see Omar Sachedina and Arif Berchi and the mayor Nancy and Shalina Shivji, and these are all people who have Ugandan and East African roots. I know from the names. I don't know them personally, but you would never have seen this 50 years ago. You were always not qualified. And I was when I was born, I was a British subject, and all my schooling was under the British system. So we wrote A levels and O levels. Our exams were sent from either Cambridge or Oxford, and they went back there to be marked. So our level of education was much higher than Canada. So when I came here and the principal put me in grade 11, I went to him at the end of the week and I said, I can teach all the courses here. And he brushed me off. So next week, I brought my textbooks and I said, this is what I studied. This is what I studied. And I started rhyming off chemistry and told him we did chemistry labs. And I had 2 years of calculus and my peers didn't even know what calculus was. And so he said, okay, you can spend the rest of the year in grade 13, but you have to come back and finish. So it was wasted time, but it taught me about Canada and how things work here. And it was the same with everyone. So today, that is still a struggle. There is lots of highly educated people from different countries driving taxis, delivering pizza. As Lisa mentioned, I helped teach English as a second language to newcomers under the citizenship program. And I had one gentleman who was a qualified doctor, and he was delivering pizza, from Boston Pizza. And, so I took him to Employment Center because I volunteered there as well. And we looked at where he graduated from. And that university is recognized by Canada. So I was helping him with his written exam. But, today, we've just hired, Pembroke Hospital just hired 2 doctors from Iran. It's only in the healthcare field, because there's such a need in Canada, that this effort is being made. Because a couple days ago, I was talking to a gentleman from Nigeria who's a PSW, but he has a master's degree in business, and he couldn't find work and he couldn't start a business. And so he went to school and became a PSW. So although there's a little progress, but 50 years later, there's still very little progress. That's one of the challenges. The other challenges with my volunteer work with Employment Center, I used to do mock interviews for people to help them get a job. And I had somebody asked if I would help this gentleman in Arnprior, extremely qualified. He's written books on peacekeeping, very qualified. And so we did a mock interview, and it was very clear within seconds for me, because he never made eye contact. He always looked down. And this is a cultural thing, because in his country, you do not look at authority in the eye. It's disrespectful. But in Canada, that's interpreted as something shady about him. He doesn't make eye contact. Again, if you take a Muslim man and you've got a female interviewing him, he might not make eye contact, and he will not look at her body parts, because that's very disrespectful and against. So it's a two-way street. Newcomers need to be educated on how you perform interviews in Canada, and Canadians need to know not to judge people on their behavior, because it may be a cultural barrier and not something else. So there's a learning on both sides that needs to happen. One of the other challenges immigrants and refugees have is raising children. That's a big one, because you want to maintain your culture, you want to maintain your language, and children want to fit in. So, you know, as a mother, are you going to send your 10-year-old son with a turban to school? Do you want him to be discriminated? You know, but then it's a very difficult balance, because children want to eat pizza, play hockey, because it's important for them to feel accepted, included, and they reject cultural things. They don't want to be like the parents, because it's difficult. There are negative consequences that come with that. And if you want to learn more about this, Elamid Mahmoud has a wonderful book, Son of Elsewhere. He came from Sudan, and his book describes exactly what immigrants go through in a very entertaining way. You might have seen him. He used to be on the Scrum on the National. Now he has his own TV program, a radio program, Commotions or something like that. But his book really describes what, because he talks about his own experience. He was 10 when he came, so he went through all of this, and now he's going back to his roots. There are many challenges, and even getting immigration status. So I will give you 2 examples. One is our Madamiques. You know, they came, well, we know the Madamique story, but his son-in-law came to help him start the business and to operate the business. And unfortunately, he had health issues and ended up with an open heart surgery. So he asked his brother from Lebanon to come, and he did, to help his father-in-law. And he came with his wife. They've been here for 6 years, helping with the business and family support. And they've been on work permits for 6 years, and they've been trying to get citizenship, landed immigrantship. And after 6 years, they haven't been able to. I have another nurse friend at the Pembroke Hospital. She was 10 years old when she found out that she had a sister. And she met her sister when she was 10 years old and her sister was 21, because they have a Chinese background, so that's a whole other issue. Her father was in Canada, and he went to China, got married, and his wife got pregnant, but it took 10 years to sponsor her to come to Canada. But the daughter couldn't come because in his application, he just had his wife's name. So it took another 10 years to get his daughter over. So these are some of the stories. And I think my time is up.
Well, thank you, Suli, for sharing your amazing journey from the time you left your Uganda to come here to Canada with your family. And I don't know if anybody's seen the Omar Sachedina documentary, but it's very similar to your family story because it happened around the same time.
Well, yes. Omar Sachedina's parents came from Uganda. I was from Kenya. So I came as an immigrant. His parents came as refugees. He was born in Vancouver. A lot of these young people on TV, they're all Canadian born. But yes, he after 50 years, he took his mother, him and his sister took his mother back, and they did a documentary on it.
Yeah, so thank you again for sharing your journey and for sharing your experiences on coming to Canada and some of the, I guess we'll call them roadblocks that existed even back, in the 70s. And of course, some that still exist these days. I think Canada as a country, though, is doing a pretty good job in trying to diversify and help as many people as we can from around the world to come here. But yes, as you said, there are still some roadblocks in terms of qualifications and education being recognized. But I think if Petawawa is any indication, I don't know if we can compare ourselves to other towns, but I find that we're getting much more diverse and much more inclusive and doing a good job of welcoming everybody that comes here and making them feel a part of our town. And a lot of that credit goes to you and your organization, the Lanark Immigration Partnership Group, in providing English language training and familiarization and helping them get jobs and other things like that. So thanks to you and your organization for helping to ease the transition for many of the immigrants into our community. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions or comments from Council. Councillor Carmody.
Thank you, Mayor Service. Thank you, Suli, for coming to speak to us tonight. Very interesting stories and quite the journey indeed. And I found it interesting that when you spoke of Pierre Elliott Trudeau, he was quite a reformer and somebody who was quite capable of turning things around when they needed to be, and that's political will. When you have it at the very top, policy can change quite quickly. And you gave one prime example of it right there. It's interesting. But thanks for your stories. It's very helpful to know.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so thank you again, and thank you for your continued work. I know that, I'm sure you know that we're sponsoring a group of Syrian refugees here in Petawawa, and one of the roadblocks they're facing is getting enough consistent ESL training. So we've been working with the school board and the LIP in terms of trying to provide more ESL training for them to, get them where they need to be in a faster way. So thanks again for doing that.
It was my pleasure. I have 2 minutes. There's another point I would like to make. Is that okay? Because you mentioned reconciliation. So what led to Idi Amin and all this uprising in East Africa was the fact that it was an East African country. And there were tribal people and lions and giraffes and elephants, and they all lived happily in harmony. And then came the British and the Asians, and it all got built up. And now you needed money, and they lost control of their land. They lost control of their lives. And they were, you know, they even, World War II, a lot of Kenyan soldiers went to fight for the British. And when they came back, there was still the upper class, the Europeans, the middle class, the Asians. And in their own country, they were the poor and at the bottom of the class. And so this was the unrest and the that they fought for independence. And when they got independence, they thought, okay, now we have control of our country, but they didn't. And so then the resentment was towards the Europeans and then towards the Asians, because they were trying to take control and be in power of their own country. This frustration is the same frustration that we see in Gaza. The Hamas were the children who saw their parents being kicked out of their house and people coming in and selecting the furniture and the toys and taking. This resentment goes from generation to generation and it amplifies. So if it's not resolved, that's what happens. And so that's why the reconciliation is so important in Canada, so that we don't have this fostering generation after generation and growing. But I have to say I'm very pleased to be a Canadian, as are most East Africans, and especially people like Omar Sajidina, and we're a different people from the Patels, the Hindus, and because we actually have Persian roots, and we didn't have a home there, we had to leave, and they settled somewhere in India. None of us really know what the roots were there, but then they left. So we never really had a country to call our own. And this is the first time that we are like in a place where we actually belong. And we have all the rights that any other Canadian has, you know? And so that's really, when you say Canada is a great country, yeah, it means a lot to us. Thank you.
Thank you. We're glad to have you here as a Canadian, and we're fortunate to have you in our community. And I think all of us here are proud Canadians as well. So thank you again for coming in and sharing your story with us. Okay. Next, we'll go into bylaws. First up, we have bylaw 1755/25, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 1597/23 and bylaw 1664/24, being a bylaw to regulate and govern the operation of all-terrain, multi-purpose, and recreational off-road vehicles on highways under the jurisdiction of the Corporation of the Town of Petawawa. I need a motion for first and second reading. Moved by Councillor Driscoll, seconded by Councillor Roots, that bylaw 1755, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 1597/23 and bylaw 1664/24, being a bylaw to regulate and govern the operation of all-terrain, multi-purpose, and recreational off-road vehicles on highways under the jurisdiction of the Corporation of the Town of Petawawa, be read a first and second time. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried.
Corporation of the Town of Petawawa, bylaw 1755/25, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 1597/23 and bylaw 1664/24, being a bylaw to regulate and govern the operation of all-terrain, multi-purpose, and recreational off-road vehicles on highways under the jurisdiction of the Corporation of the Town of Petawawa. This constitutes first and second reading of bylaw 1755/25.
I need a motion for third and final reading of bylaw 1755/25. It's moved by Councillor Carmody, seconded by Deputy Mayor Sabrin, that bylaw 1755/25 be read a third and final time and passed. Any questions or concerns on the bylaw? I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried.
Corporation of the Town of Petawawa, bylaw 1755/25, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 1597/23 and bylaw 1664/24, being a bylaw to regulate and govern the operations of all-terrain, multi-purpose, and recreational off-road vehicles on highways under the jurisdiction of the Corporation of the Town of Petawawa. This constitutes third and final reading of bylaw 1755-25, this 20th day of May 2025.
Okay, next we have bylaw 1756/25, being a bylaw for the conveyance of land owned by the municipality to 100-961-675 Ontario Inc. And Melanie's coming and Councillor Driscoll is heading to the room next door.
All right.
Okay,
So,
Melanie.
this is kind of a two-stage thing. First, I'm going to talk about the staff report, which is basically to declare the land surplus. And then if council is comfortable with that, the second part is the bylaw, which is authorizing the conveyance of the bylaw to the numbered company. So first off, just a bit of background. So last summer, we received an offer to purchase this lot in the industrial park. Council considered the offer and passed a resolution to consider the sale. The next part was to get the land surveyed, so that happened last summer and last fall. The proponent then had a site plan prepared, which showed, what they proposed to build on the property, the parking, the driveway, the fire access, all that good stuff. I brought a report to council on April 7th with the site plan that was presented to council. Council supported the site plan on condition that the owner enter into a site development agreement and follow the surplus land sale process. After that endorsement on the 7th, the town then advertised the intent to declare that land surplus as required under our land sale bylaw. And that has concluded with the clerk not receiving any comments regarding the intent to declare that land surplus. So kind of the next step in the process is for council to declare the lands surplus, which is the first recommendation in the report. And after that resolution is passed, then council can authorize the sale of the land through the conveyance bylaw 1756/25. And the last part of it, the site plan approval with council passing the resolution authorizing the sale through bylaw 1517/22, where council delegated the site plan authority to my role. I will then sign off the site plan approval for this development. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so just for clarity, the first thing we need to do as a council is resolution number 5, which is the motion to actually declare the land surplus and move that one forward. Then we'll go on to the bylaw. Okay. Questions or comments, concerns from anybody? Okay, so do I go right to the resolution first? Okay, I'll read it first just so everybody's aware. So the resolution is that part of lot 22, concession 5, with an area of 0.851 hectares, which is 2.1 acres, and described as part 1 on the registered reference plan 49R-20836, be declared surplus to be sold to 1000961-675 Ontario Incorporated, which is the Petawawa Storage Group, at a price of $21,028.67 plus expenses. So that's the motion we're looking to move forward. If you're comfortable, I need a motion. Moved by Deputy Mayor Sabrin, seconded by Councillor Donovan. Do I need to read that resolution again? I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried. I take it you're not repeating that one? No. Okay. So next we're going to the bylaw. Bylaw 1756-25, being a bylaw for the conveyance of land owned by the municipality to 1000961-675 Ontario Incorporated. Are there any questions or comments on that portion? So if you're comfortable, I need a motion for first and second reading. Moved by Councillor Coutu, seconded by Councillor Carmody, That bylaw 1756/25, being a bylaw for the conveyance of land owned by the municipality to 1000-961-675 Ontario Incorporated, be read a first and second time. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried.
Corporation of the Town of Petawawa, bylaw 1756-25, being a bylaw for the conveyance of land by the municipality to 1000-961-675 Ontario Inc. This constitutes first and second reading of bylaw 1756-25.
Need a motion for third and final reading of bylaw 1756/25. Moved by Councillor Donovan, seconded by Councillor Coutu, that bylaw 1756/25 be read a third and final time and passed. Are there any questions or concerns on the bylaw? I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried.
Corporation of the Town of Petawawa, bylaw 1756-25, being a bylaw for the conveyance of land by the municipality to 1000-961-675 Ontario Inc. This constitutes third and final reading of bylaw 1756-25, this 20th day of May 2025.
Okay, next we have bylaw 1757. Oh, wait. We have to wait for Councillor Driscoll to come back. I was on a roll. I almost carried on without you. Okay, welcome back, Councillor Driscoll. We're moving on to bylaw 1757/25, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 971/15, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a service contract with Miller Waste Systems Incorporated for the collection and transportation of garbage, recyclable material, source separated organics, and yard waste. We had a presentation a couple weeks ago, I guess, from Trevor on the new proposed system. So if you're comfortable, I need a motion for first and second reading of the bylaw. Moved by Councillor Root, seconded by Councillor Driscoll, that bylaw 1757/25, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 971/15, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a service contract with Miller Waste Systems Incorporated for the collection and transportation of garbage, recyclable material, source separated organics, and yard waste, be read a first and second time. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried.
Corporation of the Town of Petawawa, bylaw 1757-25, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 971-15, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a service contract with Miller Waste Systems Inc. for the collection and transportation of garbage, recyclable material, source separated organics, and yard waste. This constitutes first and second reading of bylaw 1757-25.
I need a motion for third and final reading of bylaw 1757/25. Moved by Deputy Mayor Sabrin, seconded by Councillor Carmody, that bylaw 1757/25 be read a third and final time and passed. Any questions or concerns on the bylaw? I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried.
Corporation of the Town of Petawawa, bylaw 1757-25, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 971-15, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a service contract with Miller Waste Systems Inc. for the collection and transportation of garbage, recyclable material, source separated organics, and yard waste. This constitutes third and final reading of bylaw 1757-25, this 20th day of May 2025.
There's no correspondence, so we'll move on to minutes for meetings. First up is the council and committee meeting of May 12th, 2025. I need a motion to approve those minutes. Moved by Councillor Coutu, seconded by Councillor Donovan, that the minutes of the council and committee meeting held on May 12th, 2025 be accepted by council, and that resolutions from that committee become resolutions of council. Any questions or concerns on the minutes? I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried. I caught a preemptive in favor. Just about threw me off. Next, we have minutes from the Petawawa Business Advisory Network meeting of April 1st, 2025. I need a motion to accept those minutes. Moved by Councillor Roots, seconded by Councillor Donovan, that the minutes of the Petawawa Business Advisory Network meeting held on April 1st, 2025 be adopted as information. Councillor Roots.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've already spoke to the minutes to council.
Also, our Manager of Economic Development, Christine Mitchell, did a presentation and spoke to the minutes and recouped everything that was brought forwards. But I will take any questions if any council members or yourself have anything to ask. Thank you.
Any questions on the P-band minutes of the meeting? Okay, then I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried. Next, we have staff report PL-18-2025, a zoning bylaw amendment application, Z191, 2833868 Ontario Incorporated, Alliance, part of Lot 18, Concession 7, Murphy Road and Dustin Drive. Melanie.
All right. This report is for information purposes only. We have a public meeting next week at the committee meeting. So just to give you a bit of information before that public meeting, the County of Renfrew approved a severance last year, severing the north third of this township lot to provide for a extension of the Portage Landing subdivision. So this land immediately butts up to that subdivision. The zoning bylaw amendment that we are considering is a condition of approval for that consent. What this amendment basically does is it rezones the lands into a residential holding zone until we have a plan of subdivision that gets draft approval. So the site that we're rezoning is about 30 acres in area. Like I mentioned, it abuts the Portage Landing subdivision. Under the provincial policy statement, this proposal meets all of the PPS requirements. It's a future residential plan of subdivision within the settlement area of town on full services, which kind of checks all the boxes. It also conforms to the official plan for all of the same reasons. It's designated residential exception 1. It's within the settlement area boundary. That exception just requires this holding symbol that we're zoning the property to until we have sewage capacity in our system and a draft plan of subdivision that's approved. This land is kind of landlocked from the consent perspective, but the Portage Landing subdivision the town owns 2 blocks to provide road access into this land. So this extension of the subdivision was contemplated as part of the original Portage Landing subdivision. And the official plan allows severances for assembling land for plans of subdivision. So it also conforms to the official plan. And like I mentioned, the rezoning is to put the land into a holding zone, so only existing uses, passive recreation, open space are permitted until the plan of subdivision is approved. And as part of the subdivision process, we'll rezone the property appropriately to the types of residential proposed in the subdivision. So that is what this zoning amendment is about. It's part of preparing these lands for a future subdivision and just putting it into a holding pattern until that subdivision is approved. And happy to answer your questions.
Questions on the report? I just have one quick one, I guess. It may be early to ask this, but I may as well. So the 2 lots that allow road access into the new proposed subdivision, whose responsibility is that to develop the roads, sidewalks on those 2 little pieces to get into the new proposed subdivision?
I would have to check the language of the subdivision agreement, but typically it's the next developer.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so we'll receive that as information, and the public meeting is May 26, 2025. Okay, thank you, Melanie. Next, we have councillor reports. Deputy Mayor Sabrin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
On the 7th of May, I chaired the Seniors Advisory Committee meeting. On the 8th of May, I was privileged to represent yourself and the rest of the members of council at McHappy Day, and all proceeds went to Ronald McDonald House. It really was like Old Home Week, and I don't think there was one person that walked in there that I didn't know and hadn't seen for a while, so it was a lot of fun for me. On the 9th of May, I participated in a ribbon cutting ceremony of the Algonquin Trail through Garrison Petawawa. Our MP, MPP, and all sorts of other people were in attendance as well to congratulate all the people who worked in partnership to make this happen. And anyways, it's a really important joining of our town of Petawawa to Deep River, so it'll just add some more trail capacity for our off-road vehicle users. And there were a lot of those folks as well as bikers in attendance as well, so it was really nice to see. On the 15th of May, I represented yourself again, Mr. Mayor, at the Pembroke Regional Hospital's CEO's breakfast, whereby there were lots of updates provided. And just by way of summarizing that, the Community Connection from the Pembroke Regional Hospital Spring 2025 edition that you probably have received in your mail has all of those details in there. So lots of really great things happening at our Pembroke Regional Hospital. That same evening, I was fortunate to be able to participate in the walk to honor and acknowledge the missing and murdered Indigenous women and children and two-spirited persons. Joined yourself and Councillor Coutu and a number of other community representatives. So that's what I've been doing for the first half of the month. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Carmody.
Nothing to report at this time, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Coutu.
Thank you, Gary. Just to say, on May 15th, I participated in Moose Hide Campaign Day, and I just want to thank the Petawawa Youth Haven Center for their organization of that event. They had a lot of amazing youth volunteers out supporting this, and a special thanks especially to members of our staff and our senior staff who helped to spread these pins to staff in our here at Town Hall and in our different departments. So I'm really encouraged, and I just want to share that 500,000 Canadians coast to coast participated in this event this year. And this is an event that's growing, and Petawawa was quite literally on the map. So if you look at us, we're way up there, Little Heart, because this was the first year that we had an event. So I'm really hoping we'll build on this and spread this message, and all of us will be encouraged to stand in solidarity and challenge harmful behaviors when we see them, and to continue to support each other. And then the other thing I've been up to is continuing to enjoy our amazing container market. So the Friday night market and the all-day Saturday market, it is always a scene, it's always a happening. We have a lot of amazing vendors and some really new community initiatives. So I encourage anyone who's not come by and to be curious and to come by. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On May 1st, I attended the change of command for the new brigade commander. It was a very busy event, and just welcomed the new commander to the area. And other than that, that's it for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the 7th of May, I was able to attend the Senior Advisory Committee that Deputy Mayor chaired. Great group of people. Of note is plans were being developed for a seniors forum that would be hosted in September timeframe. On the 15th of May, I attended the Aging in Place Forum that was held by Renfrew County in Pembroke. It was an incredibly interesting day. The lead speaker, her qualification was as a futurist. So that was a new learning curve there. Really smart lady. Theme for the day, or takeaway, was that Chat GPT will run our medical system at some point moving forward, or another AI tool similar to it, and will make drastic changes in the health and wellness fields.
Interesting. Thank you. Councillor Roots.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tuesday, May 6th, I attended the Petawawa Business Advisory Network meeting. Topics that interested this meeting was under new business, we looked at the code of conduct here with the town of Petawawa. We discussed business grants and resources. We looked at proposed Petawawa letter sign options. The container market opened on May 3rd. It's been very busy with a lot of new business options and very focused on community support. There was also another Business Connect event in April with a very good turnout of business operators. The guest speaker was from IESO Solutions, and the topic was all about energy saving technology and funding opportunities. There was also good conversation about the up-and-coming Petawawa Ramble, weekend festivities, and the Veteran Business Vendor Expo. So lots of activity with this very busy networking group. May 13th, I chaired a festival hall meeting at the City of Pembroke Chambers. Topics of interest here were financial revenue reporting. There was some really good topics that were also brought forward. I'm reaching out to our local new MPP to organize a tour of Festival Hall and also to have him attend an event to show him our live theater in action. Also in regards to programming, the year is now full of events for all ages. And this summer, as this will be our facility, we are hosting a youth spelling bee contest, ages 4 to 12, and we're getting a lot of traction with this event. I want to do more of these young youth events. Also, there's a three-day camps running weekly in June and July. This will promote youth and experience promoting dance, theater, acting, technical support, and learning music. Also, we're working with local schools, including Valor High School, to promote arts and culture in Petawawa. And as you know, I'm always trying to advance our facility and make improvements and to keep things current for our community. We will now be looking at enhanced stage lighting facility upgrade. Now, this is a very extremely expensive project, but this is a big part of experiencing a live performance at the theater. So I'm looking towards digital laser pods highlighted with LED lighting. This will be a stage-setting moment to set the stage for the future. And I will be bringing more information and planning objectives back to council for verbal updates as I'm moving very swiftly on this project. There's a lot of work involved with this, but it's something that I think is really going to take Festival Hall to the next level. Thank you.
Lots of exciting things going on. Well, you don't know how much is going on in Petawawa and the surrounding area until you go away for 2 weeks and come back and hear what everybody was doing and how everybody had to fill in for me. So thanks, Councillor Driscoll, for filling in on the 2CMBG change of command parade. And thank you, Deputy Mayor Sabrin. McHappy Day, the Algonquin Trail, the PRH breakfast, and of course, chairing 2 meetings here as well. So thanks for taking that on. But I'm back. And the first day I was back, I was fortunate to join Councillor Coutu and Deputy Mayor Sabrin on the Moose Hide campaign walk. Thanks to both of you and the EDI committee for the role that they played in bringing that event to our community. It was great to have it in Petawawa this year. I'll try and be brief because I know the CAO likes me to not go on too long, but I'll give you a short, and I know I sent you updates about what was going on, but anyways, as guest of Mayor Seabrand Bouma in Leeuwarden, Netherlands, it was only 5 days, but it was an amazing experience. From the time we arrived into the town to the minute we left, every moment was accounted for. We were treated like royalty. We were chauffeured around in the mayor's car by the mayor's driver, which I'll be campaigning for next.
Never gonna happen.
It was an electric Audi. He also had his own minibus that carted us around. But the moment we got there, there was a lunch waiting for us in City Hall, which reminded me of the Palace of Versailles. It had their own wine cellar in the basement for entertaining. I don't know if we can get that added to the renovations here. No? Okay. And it just went on from there. So there were 2 groups that looked after us. The mayor of Leeuwarden and his team made us part of a lot of their activities. And then there was the Federation of Canadian Liberators, who, when we weren't with the Town of Leeuwarden group, we were with them. And that's why there had to be all this different driving, because there were so many events in different towns. So once we were done this lunch, we went to a little town called Dokum, which is just outside of Leeuwarden, where the parade of vehicles was entering the town. And they even had the ducks, the amphibious vehicles, on the canal coming into the town. It depends on the time of day and where they were, but anywhere from 80 to 120 World War restored period vehicles. So in that town, they then took me and the mayor of Dokum and took us a few blocks away from the city center and put us in a Staghound armored vehicle and drove us into town with Jim Parks, the 100-year-old World War II veteran of the Winnipeg Rifles, who landed on D-Day, Juno Beach, first wave, in a duck, in an amphibious vehicle. And it was amazing to talk to him and hear his stories about not only D-Day and the landing, but you know, the rest of his journey through France, Belgium, Netherlands, and into Germany as well. So it was incredible to share a few moments with that veteran. Then we went from there back to Leeuwarden, and there were other festivities in Leeuwarden. We also had the chance to go to the Holton Remembrance Day ceremony. Holton is Canada's largest World War II cemetery in the Netherlands. And Canada's Governor General was there, and Princess Marguerite was there, thousands of people. And May 4th is actually their Remembrance Day. And I asked them why, and it's because the Netherlands did not take part in World War I. So November 11th has no significance to them. So May 4th is their actual Remembrance Day. And the next day was Netherlands Liberation Day on May the 5th. So they go from a solemn Remembrance Day, and then they transition to a full day of celebration. And we got to take part in a lot of other, I got to lay a wreath at the Leeuwarden Remembrance Day ceremony and participate on stage with General Rick Hillier was there throughout the whole proceedings. So go on stage with retired General Rick Hillier, Jim Parks, in front of, I don't know how many people there were, 15 to 20,000 people, all celebrating the fact that Canadian veterans had liberated their country. I also had the opportunity to light the Freedom Flame in Leeuwarden. So they would take a flame, it was almost like the running of the Olympic torch. They would take this flame and it would run through all the surrounding communities and end up in Leeuwarden. So this group of volunteer joggers brought it into town, and I got to take it up and light the Freedom Flame. So we really were treated special and got to be a part of all the ceremonies and festivities that were taking place in the town. So I can't thank Mayor Sebran Uma enough for the hospitality and the great welcome they had there, and for all the various groups that made us a part of all of their celebrations. It really was spectacular and memorable. That's the short version. Okay, there's nothing for closed. I need a motion for the confirming bylaw. Moved by Councillor Roots, seconded by Councillor Donovan, that bylaw 1758/25 be read a first, second, and third time and passed. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried.
Corporation of the Town of Petawawa, bylaw 1758/25, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on May 20th, 2025. This constitutes first, second, and third reading short of bylaw 1758/25, this 20th day of May 2025.
I need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Coutu, seconded by Councillor Carmody, that the meeting adjourn to the call of the mayor. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried.